So we open up to meet Bill. Bill's telling us that he doesn't really enjoy his life while he stares at himself in a mirror. As he's going on, a student pops up and begs Bill not to tell the principal that he saw him. He then rushes into a stall. The principal walks in and asks Bill if he saw a student. Bill says nah. The principal takes Bill's word and leaves. The student then comes out and thanks him, and he offers him some stuff that YouTube won't allow me to show on screen, and it rhymes with marijuana. Bill says nah. Anyway, we meet Mr. Jacoby, who's Bill's father-in-law, making a donation to the school and making a speech. Bill doesn't seem very close to this family dynamic. He's walking down the hallway when he accidentally hits Jess, his wife. She's with this guy, Chip, a famous news reporter, and the two seem very, very close. Bill is suspicious of Chip but acts cool. Later, Mr. Jacoby introduces Bill to some of his partners. One of the partners urges Bill to buy into a donut franchise. Bill begins talking on the phone to someone regarding said franchise, and they set up a meeting. The next day, the kid, which is the only name we know him by throughout the movie, walks into Bill's bank and asks to be mentored. Bill asks why, and the kid says because it'll look good for his company, to which Bill agrees. After work, Bill then rushes home and he overhears Jess on the phone. He begins eavesdropping and Jess stops her conversation. He grabs a candy bar from the top of the fridge and asks who she was speaking to. She says it was her mother and takes the candy bar away from him since he apparently has a candy addiction. The two begin to argue as he continues asking her questions about who she was speaking to, which ends up with Jess leaving, with a smile on her face. Later that night, while watching TV, we see Chip. Jess seems to really like this channel. She tells Bill that he must really cut down on the sugar while she watches the news. The next day, the two have another discussion and Bill tells her they shouldn't be so dependent on her father. He heads to work and is clearly still upset about the Chip situation. A co-worker walks in while he's doing this and briefs him about his upcoming schedule. He also tells him there's some mentorship students waiting to be taken on a tour. Bill heads down, gives the kids an extremely brief tour, and says he's heading back for a meeting with investors. The kids feel pretty scammed, but he leaves anyway. Later, Bill stops by to get some coffee when he meets someone he went to school with. This guy, Sherman. They chop it up and catch up on old times. Bill heads over to his brother Sergeant's place and they speak about Bill's father-in-law for a bit. He notices Chip on TV and hatches a plan. He asks his brother if he can borrow his camera. He says sure. Bill then hides the camera in his room. Afterwards, he heads out hunting with the kids he's supposed to be mentoring along with his co-workers. Bill isn't too thrilled because he hates hunting. As soon as he gets back, he rushes over to check out the camera he planted in his room. Bill grabs the camera and is almost caught by Jess, but is able to maneuver his way out. He watches the video with his brother, and yes, it's true, Jess is certainly cheating on him with Chip. Bill is extremely frustrated and heads home to confront Jess. Jess says he invaded her privacy and demands the tape. He refuses and has a better idea. He drives over to where Chip is having a live show and punches him. The scene is being broadcast by news stations everywhere, and Bill is labeled as a deranged fan who punched Chip because of the cutout he had in his wallet. The next day, the students all cheer for Bill. They still want him to be their mentor, and he says they should probably get a new one. They refuse and all say they want Bill to chaperone them. Bill's at work and he finds out the sex tape of his wife, and Chip is circling through his office building. This is because the police confiscated the tape and someone in the police force probably circulated the tape around the office. Since Bill's father-in-law, Mr. Jacoby, owns the company, everyone is trying hard to make sure he doesn't see it. Later, Bill gets home and gets very upset because instead of apologizing, Jess instead says she's worried about hers and Chip's reputation. She says she's going to check on Chip and walks away. He goes with her and they arrive at Chip's place. Chip says Bill needs to leave his property, and Bill doesn't like that very much. He drags Chip out of his house and starts putting the hands on him. Unlucky for him though, the altercation is filmed, put on the news, and he's arrested again. He's bailed out by his brother Sergeant. The next day, his friend Paul invites him to go swimming. He says nah, I'm good. His friend urges and convinces him and he relents. It turns out this was pretty good for him. He takes a swim and it relaxes him. He meets with the owners of the donut factory and they show him where the location of his donut franchise would be. Since they're a couple and would like to know who they're doing business with, they ask to see his wife. He tells them she's sick and cannot meet with them today, so they ask to see his office. He says sure and quickly rushes them into his office. The kid is at his office waiting for him since he's supposed to be mentoring him and all, and Bill introduces them. While they begin discussing business, Bill gets a knock on his door. It's Sarah, the female student he's also mentoring. She says them excluding her from the hunting they all did last week was messed up and pretty discriminatory, which, well, is kinda true. Bill isn't trying to hear all that right now though and heads back inside. They quickly finish their discussion and Bill rushes the donut factory owners out of his office. Later, Bill sees the kid fixing a billboard with his face on it, so he finally decides to start mentoring and taking him to a mall. Bill buys binoculars and a few other things. It seems the kid is just coming along while he runs errands. Later, Bill puts the binoculars to good use and is spying on Jess and Chip at his place having a discussion about the tape. Jess tells him the videotape isn't that bad and actually makes him look pretty good. Chip isn't really convinced but doesn't seem as worried. He gives her a kiss on the cheek and heads out. Bill continues to spy on his wife even after she takes her clothes off. He calls her and tells her he'll accompany her to her father's dinner tomorrow. She smiles and seems to warm up to him until the kid pops up and starts spying as well. Bill tries pushing him out of the way and is caught by Jess, which she isn't very happy about. He tells her he's just here to pick up his clothes. She brings him his clothes and tells him to stop spying. The next day he gets ready for his dinner with Jess's family. He also goes swimming to relax and work out. He then agrees to go to the mall with the kid. The plan is to get new clothes and a girl to get Jess jealous. The kid approaches this lingerie saleswoman Lucy and asks her to pose as Bill's girlfriend. She agrees to it. Bill heads over to pick Jess up and he even brings her a gift. They head to dinner with her father, Mr. Jacoby. Jess's brother starts making fun of Bill, calling him useless, to which Mr. Jacoby laughs. He then announces that he's running for mayor and tells them all to behave like a loving family. Afterwards, Jess and Bill agree to go out for coffee and talk. They're talking and warming up to each other when Lucy arrives. She starts flirting with Bill and tells him he should come back to the store when he gets a chance. Jess doesn't seem to like that very much and is quite jealous. In Bill's car, she asks about Lucy and oh hey, it's Chip. It seems he's spying on Jess in his car. Before she leaves, she gives Bill a peck and they seem to have enjoyed each other's time. Chip doesn't seem like that very much. The next day, Bill takes Lucy and the kid to a donut shop owned by the couple from earlier. The kid is being unruly and gets upset when a rude customer walks in and belittles them as he feels that he's better than service workers. Bill, Lucy, and the kid head back to his brother's place and light some fireworks. The three are having a great time. Bill even plays around with the kid, genuine fun times and stuff. Later, they head over to prepare a venue for the mentorship program's Big Bash. Bill and his brother then get into a little argument about his priorities. The next day, Jess stops by Bill's place and asks if she could see him later, to which he says yes, sirski. Bill then heads back over to his brother's place with the kid, Lucy, and her friend, where he also has a tent set up. The kid asks if he could sleep over, to which he says sure. The kid then urges him to mess around with Lucy's friend and to just lie about it. Bill says nah. The four are listening to music and getting high. Lucy's friend seems to have a thing for him and the two end up sleeping together. The next day at the picnic, Bill is chilling when the donut shop owners appear. Bill rushes over to grab Lucy so she can pretend to be his wife. He does so, but in doing this, Chip decides he got too close and activates his restraining order against him. Bill gets dragged out of the place by two security guards as he calls out to Jess. He hops in his car and starts driving very erratically. He almost hits an animal and swerves off the road, injuring himself. The fireworks he was supposed to bring to Mr. Jacoby's mayoral candidacy announcement all go off in his truck and the crowd and the picnic all look on in confusion. The kid finds him in a golf cart and rushes him to a hospital. The kid then heads over to lunch with Lucy and they agree that they should be friends. She even gives him the money he paid her to be Bill's wife back since she had such a good time. At the hospital, Jess tells him her father is quite upset. He tells her he wants to stop living off and depending on her father for their entire livelihood anyway. She asks if she can give him a ride home and he says nah, he's good. She seems disappointed that he doesn't need her though. Bill heads back over to his tent and looks at himself in the mirror. He cuts his hair and decides to start dressing up a bit more. The next day he heads over to Mr. Jacoby's office and hands in his resignation, stating that the place isn't a good fit for him. Mr. Jacoby seems to respect him for it and agrees that this is probably best for him. Bill then heads over to the donut franchise folks, completely expecting them to not offer him the franchise since he got dragged out of the picnic and was calling some entire other lady his wife, revealing that he was lying about Lucy being his wife the whole time. He walks in to find Jess speaking to them. It turns out she convinced him to give Bill the franchise after all. Bill tells Jess that he actually didn't want the franchise anymore. In fact, he came in so he can turn it down. He says that she should take it instead and he just needs to find himself. The two agree to separate peacefully and sell the house. Bill then heads over to the kid's school and tells him that since he's not with the company that he will not be his mentor anymore. He says he doesn't know where he'll go but tells him to take care of himself. He also says that he left the kid a present in his locker. The kid checks his locker and it explodes because it was filled with fireworks, to which the kid cheers. I mean, he could have died, but I guess that's cool. Anyway, that's the end of our show, ladies and gentlemen. If you like this recap, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button for more videos like this one. Take care.